When you think about some of the people in the Bible, you start from Genesis to Revelation. Who are some of the people? Which ones stand out to you as people that you think God used to do something great? I want some names. Give me some names. People that did something great in the Bible. Go ahead. Moses, definitely Moses. Anybody else? People from the Bible you think, man, was a leader, did something great. Paul. Keep going. David. Daniel. Abraham. Good. Those are awesome, good names. We'll be talking about a couple of those. Joseph is another one, definitely. Now I want you to think of modern times. If you think about some of the people that you would deem as people that God has used to do something great today, within the last 20, 30, 40 years in your lifetime, who comes to mind as people who have done something great? Anybody? Billy Graham. Yeah, that's the first one that comes to my mind. I mean, I look at Billy Graham and prejudice aside. Bob Quinlan, there you go, definitely. Anybody else? Mother Teresa, definitely, yep. We look at these people and we think about how great they were as leaders. And my question is, have you ever wondered, why can't I be like that? Or maybe the question goes a little bit deeper and you're really asking, why would God really even use someone like I am? Why would God use me? And so I've wrestled with this question throughout the course of my life, trust me. On many occasions I've thought, man, if I were God, I definitely wouldn't choose Jeremy Klein out of all these people on earth to be a great leader, to do something great for me, I'd be the last one I think I would choose if I were God. Why would God use me? Why would God use you? Have you asked yourself that question? Anybody with me on that? Why would God use someone like I am? Good. Okay, a few of you. We're going to look at three of maybe the most heroic men in the Bible that I think God used to do some great things through, but they had some shortcomings. They doubted their own abilities, and perhaps you might identify with some of their shortcomings and doubts. But my prayer this morning is that you'll see, in spite of whatever you think may be holding you back from doing something great for God, that God can still use you to do great things for Him. So the first man I want to look at was the first man that's brought up is Moses. Let's look at Moses. If anyone in the Bible had a chance at success in life, I would think Moses would come to mind. You think about how he grew up, delivered from death through the basket in the river, raised by his own mother in the palace of the king, the Pharaoh, and stepbrother of the man who would one day rise to power as Pharaoh of the world, basically. Moses had it all. Even though he couldn't assume the throne one day, the world was his oyster. He had it all in the palm of his hands. And as long as he kept his peace with the royal family, things would be good for Moses. He could have anything he wanted. Yet we read Moses flees for his life after killing a man one day and then stepping in to come to the aid of one of his brothers and them telling him that we know what you did. You killed that man. He's like, I'm out of here. So Moses flees for his life. He goes from riches to rags, and he lives his life as a fugitive, hiding out all the time. He trades his royal clothing for dirty robes and a staff to become a shepherd for his father-in-law. And then what happens? God calls him to a bush that's on fire yet not consumed. And I imagine Moses is standing there trembling, shaking, wondering, okay, what's God up to now? And Moses asks, God, why would you use me? Why are you calling me? And I can identify with Moses. Moses is like my guy. When I think about people in the Bible, I identify really well with Moses. Introverted, afraid of crowds, lacking confidence, not really good at making speeches. This just kind of letting you in my little world here for a second. I was the kid in high school that could turn a 5-minute speech into 5 seconds. Many of you believe that. I'm a fast talker, you know. But I would get up in front of the class and, you know, I'd be up there shaking and trembling and you know, sweating from head to toe. And I'd get up there and speaking as fast as I could so I can get it over with, wondering, are my kids judging me, or are my friends judging me and maybe laughing at me inside their heads, you know? And I was very concerned about all that, you know, and I was very nervous. So I like Moses, I kept asking, why would God use me? And then I knew when God was calling to become a minister. I argued with God a lot in that. But like Moses, I started asking God, why would you use me? Why would you use someone like I am? It doesn't make sense. I lacked social skills. I was kind of backward, introverted. I didn't have enough confidence to do something like this. And so I'm talking to God. And like Moses, I'm asking the question, okay, Lord, here's the deal, man. Why don't you just send somebody else to do this? You know, I'm not your guy. Trust me. This is not who you want sitting in the pulpit, you know, teaching people. This is crazy. Isn't there someone better equipped for this? And God just kept saying to me, but I'm choosing you, Jeremy. I'm choosing you to do this. I need you to do this for me. And I can't tell you the full extent of how I think God has used me over the course of the last 22 years or so. It's been amazing, you know. I mean, I look back and I think, man, you know, had I done anything else, it would have been a whole lot different. You know, I look at the people God's allowed me to baptize, and marriages, I think, that have been saved because of the words I've given to people, and how God has used me to inspire people to use their talents for the Lord, and how God has used me to help people go into ministry. I've had a few kids in my youth group from years ago go into full-time ministry, and I think, man, that's pretty cool. And God has used someone like I am to do some great things. And it's really cool. And I'll never know the extent of how far it goes, maybe until I get to heaven. What I see throughout the Bible is that God most often uses people just like I was. You know, people who lack confidence and the ability sometimes to do it. God sees Moses. He's looking at Moses from the burning bush, and he sees Moses as the perfect candidate. Moses is the perfect candidate here. In Exodus 4, we see Moses' lack of confidence come out, you know, and he says to God in Exodus 4, verse 10, he says, Moses says to the Lord, Lord, I've never been eloquent, neither in the past nor since you have spoken to your servant. I'm slow of speech and of tongue. And then, you know, so I can identify with that. You know, why are you calling me to do this, Lord? I'm the last person on earth you want doing this. And verse 11, the Lord said to him, who gave man his mouth? Don't you love when God wakes you up? He kind of taps you on the shoulder and say, yo, man, listen up. I gave you your mouth, right? Who makes him deaf or mute? Oh, speaking of that, Marlene's here today. Awesome. Awesome. Left ear, right? You're hearing pretty well out of your left ear now, and then right ear will come down the road eventually. And she appreciates all the cards and stuff you sent her. It's been awesome, okay? So God has opened up her ears, and that's, to me, that's a miracle. What they do today in medicine is just amazing. So anyway, God goes on. Who gives him his sight or makes him blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Verse 12, now go, I will help you speak and teach you what to say. And we know how the story goes from here, right? God uses Moses, a reluctant Moses, ultimately to lead the Jews out of Egypt, to cross the Red Sea on dry ground, and establish God's covenant with them, the Ten Commandments and all that good stuff, and finally lead them into the Promised Land. Moses. What do we learn? We learn that God most often uses the insecure. Isn't that amazing? I mean, you might think that you're not attractive, or you don't write the best speeches, or you don't have what it takes. You might think that you're too poor, or you're too old, or you're too young, or you fill in the blank. You may have some insecurities about your personal life, but God sees you, like he saw Moses, as the perfect candidate. You're the perfect candidate. And he promises to teach you and help you to do great things for him. I learned a very important lesson through my own insecurities. And that is, my insecurities don't define who I am. I've said this many times from here. They don't define who I am. No, God defines who I am. In Ephesians chapter 2, verse 10, we are God's what? Workmanship, that means masterpiece, a work of art. God has crafted us and to be something very beautiful and wonderful and to do great things for him. Created in Christ Jesus to do what? Good. We're every single one of you created to do something good for Jesus Christ, no matter the insecurities in your life. And I think that's awesome. And this is the cool part, is that God has prepared us in advance to do these things. Lay aside the insecurities. It's okay. God can still use you. Man number 2, David. I've often wondered, why did God use someone like David? We can look at like the later part of his life after he became king. Some of the things he did was pretty devious. Having an affair with a girl named Bathsheba, then sending her husband off to war because he got her pregnant, and sends him off to war to have him killed in the front lines. This guy's pretty devious. Why would God use someone like that? But that's not what I want to look at. I want to look at before David became king, before David slayed the giant Goliath, because it's interesting what happens here in 1 Samuel chapter 16. God sends this man named Samuel to Jesse's house in order to anoint the next king of Israel. And God tells Samuel, hey, man, I've chosen who's going to be the next king, and the next king is going to come from Jesse. One of Jesse's sons will be the next king and assume the throne. So Samuel goes to Bethlehem, and he arrives at Jesse's house. And this is pretty neat. They have this worship service. They sit back and they have this like sacrificial, they sacrifice a couple animals, and they sit back, maybe they're singing Kumbaya, I don't know. And they have this worship service. And then finally, Samuel gets up and says, okay, now it's time to anoint the next king of Israel. And Jesse, it's one of your sons. So you've got Samuel is there, and Jesse's there, and 7 of the 8 boys are in attendance. And Samuel certainly thinks that one of these 7 boys is going to be the next king of Israel. They're all attractive, and they're all tall, and they all have this charisma about them, and they look like born leaders. You ever look at somebody and say, yeah, definitely, that guy's he's a born leader. That's what Samuel sees in these 7 boys, certainly one of these guys. But then here's what happens, verse 7, but the Lord said to Samuel, do not consider his appearance or his height, for I have rejected him. The Lord does not look at the things that man looks at. Man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at what? The heart. He looks right here and he sees, I know I can use that person. But we've been in Samuel's shoes, right? We've made the judgments because, we've all been in high school and everyone admires the all-star football player. Certainly that guy's going to make it. We admire the valedictorian, the smartest kid in class. We admire the prom queen. These are the people we look at and say, yep, God's blessed them. They're the type of people we expect that they're going to do great things in their life. It's like God looks upon them with favor for some reason, and the rest of us kind of struggle through high school and we go, my goodness, why can't I be like that? But God tells Samuel, I need you to look deeper. Search deeper here. So Samuel goes through the boys one by one, and one by one God rejects each and every one of them. Nope, not him. Nope, not him. Nope, not him. And he gets to the last one. Now he's scratching his head. He's looking at Jesse, and Jesse's kind of looking back, kind of this awkward little moment. And finally, Samuel says, is that all you got? And so I can imagine Jesse, again, maybe he looks at the ground and kind of, stutters a little bit. And he says, well, I got this kid out back. He's kind of dirty and disheveled, and he's out tending our sheep right now. In fact, he's not even a man yet. I can't imagine God would want to use someone like David, a shepherd boy, the youngest, like the runt of the litter. Why would God want to use someone like David? Yet, isn't this interesting that God uses people like this all the time? You think about the people that God uses. What about those like kids with Down syndrome? Always smiling, and God uses them, to remind us to have joy in life. What about the father and son? I don't know if you've seen the videos. The son who pushes his paraplegic father in the wheelchair in marathon after marathon after marathon. Isn't that amazing? And they do it, why? To inspire us to live life with perseverance. that your life, no matter what you've got going on, it could always be worse. God uses these types of people time and time again to do great things for him. And we scratch our head and we go, why? You know, we think sometimes people, it's the ones who are a little crazy in the head. They're a little weird or backward, socially inept, you know. God uses these types of people all the time to lead people to follow Jesus. It's amazing. I look at the church sometimes and I go, really? That guy he's bringing all these people to Jesus? It doesn't make sense to me. It's amazing what the people God uses sometimes. It's the young shepherd boy out back that God chooses to lead the nation of Israel and later becomes known as the man after God's own heart. So what do we learn? God most often uses the unlikely people. The unlikely. Doesn't make sense, but God uses them all the time. You might be sitting there thinking that God's not going to use you. You're one of the most unlikely candidates, you think, because you're divorced, or you don't have a job, or maybe you're a little crazy in the head, or you're socially inept. You might think, man, I'm the most unlikely person to do something great for God because of whatever I've got going on in my life. But get this, just like David, God sees you as the perfect candidate. He can use you to do something really wonderful for him. Last man, Peter. I love talking about Peter. Poor guy. God, this is one of those ones, you know, the Southerners say, bless his heart. That's Peter. I mean, I kind of see Peter as the brown noser of the group. You know, he's the kid in class who wants to be the teacher's pet, but somebody always beats him to the punch, you know, like John or James or somebody else like that. You know, Peter's the guy, you can read like all four Gospels. You know, when Jesus asks a question, remember, welcome back, Cotter? Ooh, that's Peter. I mean, he's always saying, I know the answer, and he's always giving the answers, you know. What's a little bit different about Peter, however, in this situation is that I think from the beginning, Peter sees himself as the perfect candidate. I almost imagine that Peter's in the boat fishing with his brother, and he sees Jesus walking by, and he's out there, oh man, I hope he calls me. Oh, Jesus, over here, man. I mean, he left his nets pretty quickly. All right. But you look at Peter, and I think you see Peter, and he says, I'm the perfect candidate. I'm the one that God can use. And so how do I know this? Well, you look at some of the things he's done. When they're on the mountain of transfiguration, who was it that said, hey, let's build 3 shelters, one for you, Moses, and Elijah? You know, it's Peter. Peter's the one, as they're following him down the road, you know, Peter's the one that reminds Jesus, hey, dude, we left everything to follow you. That's Peter. Peter said that. Peter's the one, when Jesus tells his followers that he's going to be betrayed and killed, Peter's the one that speaks up and tells Jesus he's not going to let that happen. No way, Lord. I got your back here. You know, that's Peter. So Peter's like, I'm the perfect candidate. I'm going to get through this, and that's Peter. But then the night that Jesus would later be betrayed and arrested, Jesus tells Peter that he's going to deny having even known him. And remember what Peter told Jesus? Matthew 26:35, Peter says, he declares, like, this is important. No way, you know, even if I have to die with you, I will never disown you. Even if I have to, so I got your back, Jesus. Even if I got to die, I'm going to defend you to my death. That's Peter. Yet we see Peter in the courtyard that same night by the fire, and he denies, even knowing who Jesus was one time, then a second time, and then in verse 60 of Luke 22, man, I don't even know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking about. And what happens as he's speaking, the rooster crowed, as Jesus predicted. The Lord turned and looked straight at Peter. And Peter remembered the word the Lord had spoken to him. Before the rooster crows today, you will disown me 3 times. In verse 62, here's what Peter does. He goes outside and he just cries his heart out. He cries his heart out, knowing that he had betrayed the Savior of the world. Have you ever messed up like that? Have you ever done something where you just know, dope? You know? And maybe it's as simple as you hide the fact that you're a Christian. You go to work and you just you're undercover and you don't want anybody to find out. Maybe it's not as bad as that. But maybe you've got this cloud hanging over you, something bad that's happened that you've done in your life. Maybe it's a cloud of divorce or addiction or anger or financial irresponsibility. Maybe it's an affair you had. This cloud is just hanging over you, and maybe you think you've done something so bad in your life that you think there's no way God could ever use you. Why would God use someone like that? Something so bad. Now, not much gets worse than denying that you know the Savior of the world. That's pretty bad. And Jesus comes back from the dead, and what's he do? He seeks Peter out. He forgives him, and he restores him to his rightful place, and he even tells Peter, I want you to lead my sheep. And what's really cool, what's the man's name who preached to the crowd of over 5,000 people on the day of Pentecost? Peter. Who better to preach on forgiveness than the man who's been forgiven? Peter. Who was it that reached out to the Gentiles in the book of Acts later on? Peter. Who was it that wrote of suffering and glory in the last days in a couple of letters addressed in his own name? Peter. Peter understood forgiveness and mercy and grace and became the perfect candidate to talk about it. You see, God is most likely to use the broken. Have you ever felt broken? Go outside and you cry your heart out like Peter did, like, man, I can't believe I just did that. God can use you. You might think your past dictates your future. You might think that when you walk into the church building, the wall should just come crumbling in because of the bad things you've done. You might think that what you've done is the worst thing in the world and that God could never forgive you, let alone use you to do something great. But God sees you as the perfect candidate. Because you know you're forgiven. You know God's mercy. You know God's grace, and you've been saved by it. I shared this verse last week. I want to share it again here. Romans 8:28. We know that in all things, God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to you. Do you love God? Because he can use whatever you've gone through, whatever bad things you've done in your life, he can use you to do good things, to do great things for his kingdom. So the question is, what does God want to do through you? This is the tough part, because now you got to make a decision. I can't answer that for you. But let me give you some advice. It may help you discover what your God-given potential really is. We look at these three guys, Moses and David and Peter. What did they do? Well, Moses, he picked up his staff and he went, and God gave him the words to say and the courage to say them. David left his sheep and he picked up a stone and he slayed the giant. Peter accepted Jesus' forgiveness. And what's he do? He goes and he preaches to and baptizes over 5,000 men on the day of Pentecost. So what's the deal? You got to go, right? I want to go back to Peter. When Jesus came to the apostles, remember when he walked on the water? And Jesus is coming out and they see him, they're like, oh man, it's a ghost. And who was it that demonstrated his faith in Jesus Christ? Peter, of course. Peter. So verse 28, Lord, if it's you, Peter replied, tell me to come to you on the water. And Jesus says, come. And Peter gets down out of the boat, he walks on the water and he comes toward Jesus. What does God want to do through you? You're standing at the side of the boat. And Jesus is saying, come. And he's calling you to do something great, but you might feel insecure. You might feel like you're the most unlikely person God would ever use. And you might have done the worst thing a human being could ever do in this world. But God sees you as the most perfect candidate he could ever use. Are you excited about that? Like, man, he can actually use me. This is great. So here it is. Here's the advice. Are you ready for this? Like Peter, you have to step out to find out. That's it. You have to step out to find out. Jesus is standing there with his hands stretched out toward you, and he's telling you to come. He wants you to join in him and with him to do something so spectacular that the people looking on, like the disciples in the boat who didn't get out of the boat, they'll just leave them with their jaws dropped open like, whoa. God can use you to do something like that. All you have to do is step out to find out what God has planned for you. Now, I can tell you, it's probably going to get messy. It's going to get a little dangerous, just because Peter walked on the water didn't mean everything was successful for him. Remember what happened? He looked around him, he saw the wind and the waves, and he began to what? He freaked out. It's like, whoa, dude, what? He freaked out. It got a little messy, and Jesus was right there to bring him right back. It might get messy for you. I promise it probably will. It'll get messy for you when you finally step out and do something for Jesus Christ. But just like Peter and Jesus, Jesus is right there to help you come right back to the point and do something great for him. I can't tell you how God wants to use you. I can give you some options right here in our own church. We need people to step out. We need people to get in the game, so to speak. Let me give you a couple opportunities. Now, if I'm talking, something hits you like, yeah, I'd like to do that. Write that down on your attendance slip and make sure your name's on it so I get it, and we'll see where we can put you to work. Let me give you some things. Write it on your attendance slip, shoot me an email, or if you feel real daring, hit me up for a free lunch and we can sit down and talk about it. I'd love to take you to lunch. Here's what we need. I would love to see at every single door greeters. Some outgoing people, smiles on their faces, not necessarily shake hands, but to open the door and say, hey, we're glad you're here. God's going to change your life today. That would be so cool. I'd love to have people standing at the door saying that, opening the door for people, smiles on their faces. Man, it's going to be a great day. Glad you're here. If that's you, write that down. I want to be a greeter. We need people at the information center every Sunday greeting people. We have people in place now, but it's always nice to have more. We need youth workers. Joe, could you use some help? Always. We need youth workers. Dawn, you need help. Wednesday nights, we're going to start our Magic City Kids Club again here this fall. We need help with that. Dawn she can't do it by herself. We need help with that. We need people to lead small groups even. I would envision if you would want to be a small group leader, I'd love to train about 4 or 5 people to lead some small groups, to disciple people in our church and people outside our church to become better followers of Jesus Christ. If that's you, just write down small group leader. I need some people leading some. We've got some good stuff going on, the women's group, men's group, and that's all good, but we need more. We need more. Prayer warriors. Man, I admire Mary Smith and Becky Byers because they're always on it, sending out prayer requests. Some of you get the phone calls, some of you get the emails. I love that, but we need more. We need more people praying in our church, praying and asking God, what do you want from us? What do you want us to do? What do you want us to be? What's our potential? We need people praying that all the time. We need people helping with the projector, right, Chris? Chris is up there today. Yeah. We need people changing the slides as we go through the sermons and the songs. It's a fun job. And I appreciate the people that do that. We need people on the camera, video camera. We need elders and deacons and deaconesses and trustees. Now, we need some trustees. Just some people that say, you know what, I can help with that. We need people overseeing the building, those kinds of things. We've handed out some acceptance forms. I hope you say yes. We need these people. Outreach. We need people to help with outreach. I would love to form a team of people, maybe 6 or 7 people, where we can get together and talk about how do we reach our community. What are some good ways to make us known in our community so the people of Barberton say, man, First Church of Christ, that's a great place to be. I would love to have a team of people we can work together and do some things in our community to bring people to know Jesus. Those are just some of the things that are top of mind to get involved. There may be some other ways, praise team, communion prep, all kinds of different things we got going on here. My desire, and I've said this before, is to see 100% of our congregation involved in some way, doing something great for Jesus Christ. All right? Let me close with this. As much as I would love to, I can't push you out of the boat. And I mean that with all sincerity. I can't push you out of the boat. I wish I could. It's your decision. You have to step out to find out.